Don't think, just choose what your soul is hiding. The soul often knows what the mind has forgotten. Welcome to Spiritual Wisdom. In today's video, we're diving into the symbols, instincts, and quiet truths that reveal who you really are beneath the noise of everyday life. This is more than a test. It's an invitation to reconnect with the part of you that speaks without words, guides without force, and remembers what your conscious mind overlooks. As you explore these symbols, I encourage you to apply these insights to your daily life, because real transformation begins the moment you trust your inner voice. Before we begin, let me ask you, what does your soul already know that your mind keeps doubting? Share your thoughts in the comments, and let's grow together. 1. Symbols speak the language of the soul. The 4 hand-drawn symbols before you are not random marks on a page, but living reflections of unconscious truth, quietly revealing the inner state you carry beneath thought, personality, and habit. Each symbol mirrors something real within you that exists beyond logic, beyond explanation, and beyond deliberate choice, which is why your first instinct matters more than any analysis you could perform afterward. The moment you feel drawn toward one symbol without hesitation, your soul is already speaking, bypassing rational filters and expressing what words cannot reach. This is how spirituality operates at its purest level, not through belief alone, but through direct inner recognition. Your choice reflects emotional patterns, inner tension, hidden strength, vulnerability, longing, and the silent direction your life energy is moving toward right now. It shows where you are emotionally situated in this season of your life, whether you are standing at the edge of transformation, retreating into self-protection, awakening to deeper truth, or learning to trust your own inner authority again. The symbol does not predict your future, but it exposes your present truth, revealing what you may not consciously admit yet fully feel. Each of the 4 symbols carries a different energetic message, shaping how you relate to your fears, your desires, your relationships, and your own sense of meaning. One may reflect a guarded heart that has learned safety through distance. Another may reflect a soul that is finally ready to release control and surrender into growth. Another may reveal the tension between who you have been and who you are becoming, while another may expose the quiet longing for authenticity that has been buried beneath obligation and expectation. When you choose without thinking, you are not choosing blindly. You are responding to emotional memory, nervous system awareness, and intuitive intelligence that already knows where you truly stand. This process itself is part of spiritual awakening, because awareness does not begin through effort. It begins through recognition. The symbol you are drawn to reflects how you navigate emotional closeness, how you process fear, how you respond to uncertainty, and how deeply you currently trust yourself. It also reveals what your soul is asking you to face, whether that is healing old wounds, setting stronger boundaries, reclaiming lost confidence, or finally allowing yourself to outgrow an outdated version of who you once needed to be. What makes these symbols powerful is not their appearance, but the quiet truth they trigger when you recognize yourself in them. Symbols speak directly to the unconscious because they do not argue, they do not persuade, and they do not explain. They simply resonate. That resonance bypasses resistance and touches emotional reality as it truly is, not as you wish it to be. This is why your first reaction matters more than whatever story your mind creates afterward. That immediate attraction is the reflection of your current emotional alignment, your unspoken needs, and the stage of inner evolution you are navigating now. Through this lens, your choice becomes a mirror that shows how you move through life, whether with caution or courage, whether with fear or trust, whether with emotional armor or open vulnerability. It reveals how closely your outer behavior reflects your inner truth, and whether your life is aligned with your deeper values or still being shaped by unresolved emotional history. In this sense, the simple act of choosing a symbol becomes a moment of self-revelation, where unconscious truth rises into conscious awareness, not through effort, but through recognition. And as that awareness grows, so does your ability to understand your own patterns, your emotional reactions, your relationship dynamics, and the subtle spiritual forces shaping your journey forward. Are you ready to listen to the quiet language of your soul? If this message resonates with you, comment below. I choose with my soul to affirm your commitment to trusting the symbols guiding your path. 2. The power of intuitive choice. You are asked not to overthink which symbol you are drawn to not analyze it, and not to search for logical reasons, but simply to choose, because intuition always moves faster and deeper than logic. Your soul recognizes what you need long before your conscious mind can explain it. And in that quiet, instant pull toward something, your inner truth is already speaking. While the mind hesitates, questions, and demands proof, your intuition responds immediately, guided by layers of awareness that exist beneath thought. This is where spirituality first becomes real, not through belief, but through direct inner recognition. When you allow yourself to choose without forcing explanation, you begin to experience how your inner guidance operates beyond reasoning. You may not understand why one symbol calls to you more than another, but that attraction is shaped by your hidden emotional needs, unresolved tension, inner desires, and the silent direction your life is already moving toward. Your intuition does not work with evidence. It works with resonance. It draws you toward what reflects your current state of spiritual development, even when your conscious awareness has not yet caught up. Carl Jung taught that much of who we are exists in the unconscious, and intuitive choice is one of the fastest ways that unconscious material rises into awareness. When you follow what pulls at you without thinking, you are not choosing randomly. You are allowing your deeper self to speak without interference. Overthinking interrupts this process because it places fear, control, and doubt between you and your inner truth. Intuition, on the other hand, bypasses fear entirely and moves directly toward meaning. As you begin to trust this inner process more often, you may notice that your intuitive choices consistently point toward growth, emotional healing, and deeper self-awareness. What you are drawn to often reflects what you are ready to face, what you are ready to release, and what you are ready to become. This is how spiritual development unfolds naturally, not through forcing change, but through responding to what your inner world is quietly requesting. Your mind is trained to protect you from uncertainty, but your soul is designed to guide you through transformation. Logic seeks safety, while intuition seeks alignment. When you choose intuitively, you are not abandoning reason. You are placing it in balance with inner knowing. Over time, This balance strengthens your ability to move through life with clarity, even when the path ahead is not fully visible. With practice, you begin to realize that intuition does not shout, it whispers, and it is only when the noise of overthinking quiets that you can finally hear it clearly. Every time you honor that inner pull, instead of resisting it, you strengthen your trust in yourself. Your spirituality becomes something you live rather than something you analyze, and your spiritual development becomes a continuous unfolding, guided by inner awareness instead of external pressure. Through intuitive choice, you learn essential lessons that shape your growth. Trust must come before certainty. Inner listening is a skill that becomes stronger with use. Not every truth arrives through logic, and transformation often begins the moment you stop needing to fully understand where you are being guided. Each intuitive choice you make brings you closer to alignment, clarity, and the deeper truth that has always existed within you. Symbol 1. The flowing line, sensitivity, and emotional depth. If your attention was drawn to the smooth, ribbon-like flowing line, it reveals that you are entering a phase of gentle strength, harmony, and deep emotional intelligence, where you no longer move through life with resistance, but with an intuitive softness that still carries power beneath its surface. This symbol reflects a kind of spirituality rooted in sensitivity, an ability to feel the world before you think about it, to sense subtle emotional shifts long before anyone speaks, and to read the energy of a room the way others read words on a page. You influence others not through pressure or persuasion, but simply through presence, because your energy holds a calming frequency that helps people return to themselves. And even if they cannot explain it, they feel safe, seen, and softened around you. This is the emotional depth that Carl Jung hinted at when he suggested that the unconscious speaks in symbols, because your choice reveals a soul that heals without trying, comforts without effort, and guides without speaking. This emotional intelligence is not a weakness, but a refined form of wisdom that grows quietly within you, especially during moments of spiritual awakening, where your sensitivity becomes a doorway rather than a burden. You often notice the things others overlook: the tremble in a voice, the shift in someone's gaze, the tension a person hides behind a forced smile, and these observations give you an understanding of human nature many people never reach. Yet this gift also carries a warning, because when you feel deeply, you can also absorb what does not belong to you. And the flowing line teaches that softness requires direction, the way water needs a riverbank to keep flowing instead of flooding. Your compassion must be balanced with boundaries, so your intuition guides rather than drains you, and your kindness becomes clarity rather than sacrifice. The power of the flowing line lies in its quiet influence, shaped not through dominance, but through consistency, not through noise, but through resonance. You change others simply by being yourself. You inspire healing, not by giving advice, but by emitting an energy where honesty feels safe and self-reflection becomes natural. This subtle presence is what makes you unforgettable. People may forget your words, but they remember how they felt in your presence. Jung's insight that what you resist persists applies deeply to you, because your strength grows when you surrender to your nature instead of fighting it, allowing your emotions to guide you toward truth rather than away from it. To choose this symbol is to acknowledge that your soul communicates in currents rather than commands, in intuition rather than logic, and in connection rather than control. It reveals a self that evolves through openness, a heart that understands darkness without being consumed by it, and a spirit that stays gentle even in a world that often rewards hardness. This flowing energy inside you becomes a path, one that quietly shapes your relationships, your decisions, and your destiny. And as you continue aligning with this inner flow, your presence becomes not only soothing, but transformative. The kind of influence that touches others long after you've left the room, because it is felt, not spoken. Have you ever felt the quiet pull of your emotions guiding your choices? If this resonates with you, share your experience in the comments so we can learn together. And if you're just beginning to listen to that inner flow, comment, "I will trust my feelings," and let this journey start now. Symbol 2. The vertical line with loop, stability, and integrity. The vertical line with a loop reflects the kind of quiet strength that does not seek attention, yet holds everything together. It reveals a soul that values stability, integrity, and emotional balance above all else. You move through life with a natural sense of order, preferring clarity over chaos and calm over emotional extremes. Even in tense situations, you remain centered, grounded, and composed. And this steady presence naturally brings peace to others. People instinctively feel safe around your energy because you carry emotional clarity without judgment, and your ability to stay balanced in stormy moments makes you someone others rely on when everything feels unstable. This is a powerful sign of spiritual maturity and deep inner control, showing strong awareness within your spirituality and steady progress in spiritual development. Yet hidden beneath this quiet strength is a pattern you may not fully see. Because you are so reliable, you often take on more responsibility than is fair to yourself. You become the one who holds everything together, while quietly setting aside your own need for rest, gentleness, and emotional care. You may tell yourself that you can rest later, that you must stay strong a little longer, or that others need you more than you need yourself. Over time, this creates emotional weight that you carry alone, even while your outer world sees only your calm surface. Your adaptability allows you to endure change without complaint, but endurance should never become emotional isolation. True balance in spirituality is not only about being steady for others, but also about honoring your own need for softness, release, and restoration. Your integrity is one of your strongest qualities. You are deeply guided by your values, and once you commit to something, you stand by it with unwavering loyalty. You do not shift your principles to fit convenience, and this gives you quiet authority. Others may not always understand your choices, but they feel the strength behind them. This integrity makes you a living example of emotional discipline and inner order. And without speaking much, you teach others what stability truly looks like. However, when integrity becomes too rigid, it can turn into emotional tightness rather than inner freedom. The loop within the symbol represents circulation, reminding you that energy must flow rather than remain locked in control. Without softness, even the strongest structure begins to feel heavy rather than supportive. This symbol also reveals a deep inner conflict between strength and tenderness. You have mastered control, patience, and restraint, but you may struggle to allow yourself to be emotionally vulnerable. You may feel uncomfortable resting when others are struggling, and uneasy receiving support instead of giving it. Yet Carl Jung warned, "What you resist persists, and what you deny within yourself eventually demands attention in other ways." When your soul is deprived of rest and emotional release, life may create pauses for you through exhaustion, emotional distance, or feeling disconnected from your own needs. This is not punishment, but a correction meant to restore balance within your spiritual development. The vertical line represents your strength and direction, but the loop gently reminds you that strength without renewal eventually becomes pressure. You are not meant to carry everything alone. Your calm does not lose its power when you rest. Your integrity does not weaken when you soften. Your emotional clarity does not dissolve when you allow yourself to feel deeply. In fact, your spirituality becomes more complete when strength and gentleness exist together rather than in opposition. You bring peace to others because you have learned to stay grounded in chaos. But now your soul is asking you to learn how to stay grounded in rest as well. Do you feel this truth within you? If you do, affirm it in the comments. I stand in my truth with strength and integrity. Let your soul speak. Symbol 3. The swirling shape, complexity and transformation. If the swirling shape is the symbol that drew your attention, it reflects a soul that lives in motion, shaped by vibrant energy, emotional depth, and constant transformation. You are not meant for straight lines or predictable paths. Your nature is to evolve through cycles of change, contrast, and inner tension. And even when life feels chaotic, that movement is not working against you. It is revealing who you truly are. You carry intensity and wisdom at the same time, often feeling multiple emotions at once, thinking in layers, and sensing directions others cannot see. This is why you may feel pulled in many directions, yet still possess an unshakable inner sense of where you are meant to go. As Carl Jung once said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And your life reflects that truth more clearly than most, because your growth does not come from comfort, but from experience, from friction, from emotional storms that sharpen your intuition rather than weaken it. Each moment of confusion, each sudden turn, each collapse that forced you to rise again has carved deeper awareness into your spirit, building a form of spiritual wisdom that cannot be learned from books alone. You may notice that your life unfolds in repeating phases of destruction and rebirth. Old identities fall away, outdated dreams dissolve, relationships change or end without clear explanations. Yet every ending leaves behind a clearer sense of self, a deeper compassion for others, and a stronger connection to your own truth. This pattern is not a flaw. It is the very engine of your transformation. Jung described this process as individuation, the lifelong unfolding of the true self beneath social masks and expectations. And your swirling nature mirrors this inner journey perfectly. You are not here to settle into a single fixed role. You are here to become, again and again. This is why others may misunderstand your shifts, your sudden clarity, or your refusal to stay the same. While they search for stability through repetition, you search for alignment through change. As another timeless truth reminds us, what the caterpillar calls the end, the rest of the world calls a butterfly. And your life reflects this truth repeatedly, often in ways that feel painful in the moment, but unmistakably meaningful in hindsight. Your swirling energy also reveals a deeply creative and multidimensional mind. You do not think in straight lines, you sense patterns, emotional undercurrents, and hidden connections long before they fully emerge in visible form. This allows you to read people with uncanny accuracy, to feel shifts in energy before words are spoken, and to recognize truth beneath appearances. At times, this depth may overwhelm you, making you feel restless, misunderstood, or emotionally overloaded. Yet this same sensitivity is what gives you extraordinary insight, empathy, and adaptability. Jung's words, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious," speak directly to your path. Because your growth does not come from avoiding emotional complexity, but from moving through it with awareness. Each shadow you face strengthens your intuition. Each inner conflict expands your understanding. Each moment of uncertainty becomes a teacher rather than a threat. When you stop resisting your own complexity and begin to trust the intelligence of your transformation, your swirling nature no longer feels like chaos. It becomes purpose in motion, a living expression of spiritual wisdom shaped through experience, depth, and the ongoing courage to evolve into the truest version of who you are. Symbol 4. The delicate spiral, gentleness and quiet resilience. Choosing the delicate spiral reveals a soul shaped by gentleness, subtle power, and deep emotional intelligence. A person whose growth does not come through loud disruption, but through quiet, steady inner movement. This choice reflects cycles of transformation that happen softly, almost invisibly, where strength develops not through force, but through patience and presence. You feel deeply, yet you do not need to display that depth for the world to validate it. Your healing does not arrive in dramatic breakthroughs, but unfolds gradually, like a spiral that tightens and expands with each passing season, returning you again and again to deeper layers of yourself. This is the nature of your spirituality and spiritual awakening, rooted not in spectacle, but in steady becoming. As Carl Jung once suggested, true transformation does not happen by chasing light alone, but by meeting what is hidden within. And you do this gently, without violence toward your own inner world. Your presence carries a quiet, calming effect. You do not dominate a room with volume or force, yet people often feel safer, steadier, and more grounded when you are near. This is because your nervous system has learned stillness, and your emotional world has learned balance. You listen not only with your ears, but with your entire being. You absorb without being overtaken, care without being consumed, and give without losing yourself completely. While others may chase power through control or attention, your strength lives in restraint, in softness, in the ability to remain open without becoming fragile. The world may not always recognize this kind of resilience because it does not announce itself boldly, but its impact is often deeper and longer lasting than loud expressions of force. Your path of growth moves in cycles rather than straight lines. There are moments when it seems as if you are returning to familiar emotions, revisiting old patterns, or walking the ground you thought was already crossed. Yet each return is different. Each turn of the spiral brings new understanding, greater emotional maturity, and a quieter kind of confidence. What may appear from the outside as slowness is, in truth, integration. What may look like hesitation is actually discernment. Your soul does not rush because it is not chasing approval or escape. It is learning how to remain. This is why your transformation feels natural rather than violent, organic rather than forced. You feel pain deeply, but you process it with tenderness instead of urgency. You do not break yourself open to heal. You soften into healing. Where others may react with intensity, you respond with reflection. Where others seek instant release, you allow time to do its sacred work. This gentle rhythm teaches you that not all change must be dramatic to be real. Some of the most profound shifts happen quietly, without witnesses, without applause, without visible collapse. They happen in the silent choices you make to remain compassionate when bitterness would be easier, to remain calm when chaos invites reaction, and to remain loving even when the world grows cold. Your quiet resilience becomes a sanctuary for others. You may not see yourself as powerful, yet people are often drawn to your emotional steadiness without knowing why. You become the calm center when emotions overflow, the grounding energy when life feels unbalanced. This is not because you suppress feeling, but because you have learned how to hold it without drowning in it. You understand that gentleness is not weakness, but a form of mastery. Stillness is not absence, but strength in its purest form. And as your spiral continues to unfold, your growth does not demand speed, only sincerity, each gentle rotation carrying you deeper into truth, deeper into compassion, and deeper into the quiet power of who you are becoming. As we move deeper into this journey of self-discovery, let this symbol remind you that true strength often grows in silence and softness. If this message resonates with your soul, leave a comment. I rise through gentleness and resilience. Let this be your quiet declaration as we continue forward together into the next stage of awakening. 7. Each symbol reflects a phase, not a fixed identity. Each symbol is not a permanent definition of who you are, but a reflection of your current inner landscape in this exact moment. It does not represent your entire life, your destiny, or an unchanging identity. Instead, it mirrors what is most alive within you right now, the emotional state you are moving through, the lesson you are learning, or the truth that is slowly rising to the surface. You may feel deeply connected to one symbol today and find yourself drawn to a completely different one at another time. And this shift does not mean you were wrong before. It simply means your soul is moving, evolving, and responding to the natural rhythm of growth that shapes all genuine spirituality and spiritual awakening. Your intuitive choice changes because you change. The mind likes to seek fixed labels, but the soul moves in seasons. At one stage, you may be in a period of healing, where hidden wounds are asking for attention. At another stage, you may be stepping into confidence, truth, or self-expression. Each symbol reveals what part of you is currently awakening or quietly asking to be seen. Some symbols rise when your heart is learning to soften again. Others appear when your strength is being forged through challenge. None of them cancel out the others. They simply describe different chapters in the same unfolding story. Just as Carl Jung taught that the unconscious shapes our lives until we become aware of it, these symbols act as mirrors for what is operating beneath the surface of conscious thought. They do not predict your future. They reveal your present. They show how you are thinking, feeling, protecting yourself, opening yourself, or resisting change right now. When you resonate with a symbol, it is not because it defines you forever, but because it reflects the specific energetic and emotional climate of your inner world in this phase of your journey. As your awareness deepens, your intuitive choices naturally shift. What once felt accurate may later feel distant, and what once felt unfamiliar may suddenly feel deeply true. This is not inconsistency. This is growth. The danger comes only when a phase is mistaken for a permanent identity. When you cling to a symbol as if it defines you for all time, you stop listening to the movement of your own soul. But when you understand that each symbol represents a living moment rather than a fixed destination, you remain in harmony with your inner evolution. Your soul does not speak in rigid labels or permanent roles. It speaks in cycles, transitions, and quiet inner movements. One season calls for stillness and reflection. Another calls for courage and action. One moment requires protection. Another demands surrender. The symbol you resonate with simply reflects what your soul needs now, not who you must remain forever. Through this awareness, spirituality becomes something lived and fluid, rather than something rigid and defined. Every symbol you choose reveals a truth that is either waking up within you or gently asking for your attention. Nothing appears by accident. Each reflection carries meaning because it emerges from the deeper layers of your psyche. As your consciousness expands, the symbols change with you, guiding you not toward a fixed identity, but toward deeper self-recognition. In this way, your intuitive choice becomes a living dialogue with your inner world, a quiet confirmation that your soul is always in motion, always awakening, and always revealing new dimensions of who you are becoming. 8. The deeper message. Trust your inner voice. This experience is not about classification or labels, but about self-revelation, the moment when your instinctive choice becomes a quiet but undeniable message from your soul, urging you to notice what is rising within you right now. What you chose did not come from calculation or analysis, but from a deeper place that already understands what your conscious mind is still learning to accept. Your instinct speaks in subtle movements rather than loud declarations, yet its guidance is precise, personal, and rooted in your truest direction. When you allow yourself to trust that inner signal, you step out of resistance and into alignment, where growth no longer feels forced, but natural. Transformation does not begin with logic alone, and it is rarely born through overthinking. It begins the instant you listen inward and take one small step in the direction your soul already recognizes as meaningful. This is the hidden rhythm of spirituality, where understanding is not gathered through control, but through awareness, presence, and courage. Carl Jung captured this truth when he said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Your choice reveals that your unconscious has already started to speak, guiding you toward what must be seen, healed, expressed, or released. The more sincerely you respond to that guidance, the more your spiritual development deepens, not through sudden perfection, but through honest movement. Trusting your inner voice does not mean the path will always feel comfortable. At times, it may bring uncertainty, vulnerability, or the fear of leaving what is familiar. Yet these sensations are not signals of danger. They are signs of expansion. Growth stretches what is known so that something more authentic can emerge. Each time you honor what rises from within, instead of silencing it, you confirm your own worth, clarity, and direction. This quiet trust reshapes how you respond to challenges, how you hold your boundaries, and how you act when no one is watching. Your soul does not demand that you see the entire road ahead. It only asks that you take the next honest step. As you do, what once felt confusing begins to organize itself. What once felt uncertain gains stability, and what once felt hidden begins to express itself through your choices and your presence. This is how inner truth becomes lived reality, not through pressure, but through consistent alignment. When you move with what your inner voice reveals instead of against it, you are no longer reacting to life from fear or habit, but responding from clarity and meaning. And in that shift, true transformation quietly takes root. In the end, what matters most is this: your soul already knows the truth long before your mind tries to explain it. These symbols, these choices, are not tests of logic. They are reflections of your deepest intuition, the part of you that speaks in whispers, images, and quiet knowing. When you stop overthinking and simply choose, you give your inner wisdom space to rise, to guide you, and to reveal what you've been carrying within all along. If this message from spiritual wisdom resonated with you, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe to the channel. And make sure to turn on notifications so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Your journey of self-discovery is just beginning. The 7 deadly boundaries that make empaths immune. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Carl Jung. Welcome to Spiritual Wisdom. Today, we're diving into the 7 deadly boundaries that make empaths immune, the powerful inner shields that turn sensitivity into strength and emotional intelligence into unshakable self-mastery. As you listen, I invite you to reflect on your own life. Which of these boundaries do you already practice? And which ones do you feel called to strengthen? Share your thoughts in the comments below so our community can learn and grow together. Let this be the moment you reclaim your energy, protect your peace, and rise into the most empowered version of yourself. 1. Refusal of emotional responsibility. The refusal of emotional responsibility is one of the most powerful boundaries an empath can ever establish, because it marks the moment you finally recognize that someone else's emotions are not a weight you were born to carry. This single shift becomes a turning point in spirituality and spiritual awakening, pulling you out of the lifelong pattern where guilt, fear of disappointing others, and the unconscious desire to keep the peace have shaped how you show up in the world. For so long, you may have absorbed the emotions of others as if they were your own, believing you were responsible for their reactions, their moods, and their internal storms. But the truth is that their anger belongs to them. Their sadness belongs to them. Their disappointments belong to them. And none of these emotions are yours to fix or hold. When this clarity finally clicks, something inside you awakens something strong, calm, and deeply rooted. This boundary becomes even more necessary when you understand how many people, intentionally or not, use emotional projection as a way to avoid facing their own inner conflict. Without this boundary, an empath becomes the default emotional caretaker in every relationship, constantly over-explaining, apologizing, adjusting, shrinking, or softening themselves just to keep others stable. But once you embrace the truth that you are not responsible for anyone else's emotional landscape, the guilt that used to control you begins to lose its power. You stop feeling obligated to solve problems you did not create. You stop walking on eggshells to protect fragile egos. You stop confusing compassion with self-sacrifice. And for the first time, you can love people from a place of clarity rather than fear. As this boundary settles into your life, you start seeing the difference between being supportive and being used, between caring for someone and carrying them, between empathy and emotional servitude. People who once relied on your emotional labor may resist, question, or even accuse you of being distant. But this resistance is only a sign that the old pattern is breaking. You are not becoming harder. You are becoming whole. You are not becoming selfish. You are becoming sovereign. Your spiritual awakening teaches you that taking responsibility for what is not yours only keeps others dependent, unhealed, and disconnected from their own growth. By stepping back, you are not abandoning them, you are allowing them to meet themselves. This boundary does not make your heart colder, it makes your presence clearer. You can still listen, care, and hold space, but you do so without absorbing the emotional chaos of those around you. You recognize the subtle moment when someone tries to make their feelings your burden, and you return that energy gently but firmly, telling yourself, "This is theirs, it is not mine." With each repetition of that truth, your aura becomes stronger, brighter, more stable, and undeniably powerful. You stop being pulled into emotional storms that were never meant for you, and instead, you stand rooted in your own inner ground. And from that place of alignment, you discover that the most sacred form of empathy is the one that honors your energy, protects your peace, and allows your soul to finally breathe. If this message resonates with you, comment below. I release what is not mine to carry. 2. Prohibition of over-explanation. The prohibition of over-explanation is a boundary that protects your emotional clarity and strengthens your spiritual development, especially if you are an empath who naturally absorbs the feelings and expectations of others. When you state a boundary, once calmly, clearly, and without hesitation, you reclaim your power, because every additional explanation weakens your position and quietly teaches others that your no is open for negotiation. Over-explaining becomes an invitation for others to challenge you, push you, or manipulate you, not because you are wrong, but because people sense that you feel obligated to justify your feelings. And when people feel they are owed a justification for your personal truth, they will keep digging, questioning, and pressuring you, turning your emotional openness into a tool for their benefit. That is why you must remind yourself that your boundaries do not require a debate, a defense, or a lengthy story. They simply require your confidence. As Carl Jung said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. And often, the individuals who refuse to accept your boundary the first time are the same individuals who lack the emotional maturity to face their own limitations. When you over-explain, you are not being kind. You are allowing someone to avoid their own accountability. As you step deeper into spirituality and spiritual development, you begin to recognize that explaining yourself too much is a subtle form of self-betrayal. It signals that you fear being misunderstood, rejected, or judged. Yet the more you explain, the more you give away your inner authority. A strong boundary needs only your clarity, not your justification. And when you embrace this truth, your presence becomes more grounded, your communication becomes more direct, and your energy becomes less available for people who drain it. Speaking once and standing firm trains your nervous system to trust your intuition rather than other people's reactions. It teaches your heart that your emotions are valid even when no one agrees. It teaches your mind that peace is more valuable than being liked. And it teaches your spirit that self-respect is not something you earn, it is something you embody. With each moment, you resist the urge to explain. You pull your power back into yourself. Your relationships become cleaner and more honest, and you naturally attract people who understand and respect you without requiring extra words. The lesson is simple but transformational. Your boundary is not a request, it is a statement. Your truth does not need defending. Your peace does not need approval. And the moment you stop over-explaining, you step into a higher state of self-trust that strengthens every part of your life. 3. Tolerance of disappointment. When you develop the strength to tolerate someone's disappointment without rushing in to soothe them, rescue them, or fix the situation, you step into a level of personal power that most empaths never reach, because you finally understand that disappointment is not harm. It is simply a reaction to unmet expectations, and those expectations were never your obligation to fulfill in the first place. People may sigh, become quiet, look sad, or subtly withdraw in hopes that you will bend. But their emotional responses are not proof that you've done something wrong. They are simply expressions of their own desires, and you are not required to rearrange your entire life every time someone else feels a temporary discomfort. Carl Jung said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And this boundary demands exactly that, accepting your right to disappoint others when protecting your energy, your time, and your truth requires it. You begin to understand that the fear you feel when someone is disappointed in you is not intuition, it is conditioning, old emotional programming that taught you that your value depends on making everyone else comfortable, even at the expense of yourself. As you face this truth, you start to see how easily people can control you when you cannot hold steady in the presence of their displeasure. Because the moment you feel responsible for fixing emotions that are not yours, you hand over your sovereignty, your choices, and your identity. You may think you are being kind when you rush to soften their disappointment, but what you are really doing is teaching them that all they need to do to influence you is show a little sadness or frustration. This is how many empaths lose themselves, not through dramatic manipulation, but through small, subtle, emotional cues that keep them stuck in the role of caretaker, peacekeeper, and emotional buffer. Spiritual wisdom teaches you that compassion is not the same as self-sacrifice. Compassion says, "I see your feelings," while self-sacrifice says, "Your feelings are my responsibility." And those paths lead to entirely different lives. When you stop absorbing disappointment as if it were danger, you reclaim the emotional space that was always meant to belong to you. You begin to realize that people who truly value you will respect your boundaries even when they feel disappointed, while those who only valued your compliance will resent your growth. This boundary becomes a filter, revealing who is connected to your soul and who is connected only to your usefulness. And as you practice holding steady, you become grounded in a deeper inner truth, the kind of psychological independence Carl Jung described as individuation, where you no longer shape yourself to meet expectations that drain your spirit. You understand that disappointment is a normal, necessary part of human relationships. It builds emotional maturity, resilience, and honesty. And by allowing others to sit with their own discomfort, you are giving them the opportunity to grow instead of enabling emotional dependency. With time, you will feel a quiet empowerment rising within you, a sense of freedom that comes from knowing you no longer have to twist, shrink, or betray yourself just to keep the peace. You begin to make decisions based on your values, not on someone else's reactions. You start saying no without explaining yourself to exhaustion. You show up authentically without fearing who might disapprove. And slowly, your entire life transforms, not because others changed, but because you finally stopped letting disappointment, guilt, and emotional pressure control you. Stay connected with our spiritual wisdom community by subscribing to the channel. Here, we grow through every challenge, rise above disappointment, and learn to protect our energy with strength and clarity. Remember, you are a resilient soul, worthy of peace, purpose, and the powerful boundaries that keep your spirit aligned. 4. Separation of care from compliance. You can love deeply, care sincerely, and hold compassion in your heart without feeling obligated to obey every request or demand that comes your way. Because one of the most powerful realizations in spirituality is that care and compliance are not the same thing, and confusing them is the very trap that exhausts empaths and slowly dims their inner light. When you begin your spiritual awakening, you notice how easily compassion can turn into self-sacrifice when you believe that kindness must always be followed by obedience. Yet the truth is that genuine care loses its purity the moment it becomes an obligation. This is why empaths must learn to pull apart these two ideas: care as a voluntary expression of love, and compliance as a conditioned response rooted in fear, because only when they are separated can you give from your soul without draining your soul. Care comes from your heart, but compliance often comes from pressure, guilt, or a long history of being rewarded for pleasing others. And when these two merge, you begin to believe that saying no makes you unkind, selfish, or cold, even though refusing something that harms your peace is one of the most sacred acts of self-respect. Empaths especially struggle with this boundary because their sensitivity makes them aware of others' discomfort, disappointment, or frustration. And this awareness tempts them to surrender their own needs just to avoid conflict. But spiritual wisdom reminds you that peace built on self-betrayal is not peace, it is suppression. And the more you suppress, the further you drift from your spiritual awakening. When you finally understand this, you begin to differentiate between caring for someone and carrying someone. And that shift becomes a turning point in your emotional life. People who have grown accustomed to your compliance may react when you begin to draw this boundary, interpreting your newfound clarity as rebellion or distance. But this reaction reveals their true intentions. They never valued your care, only your availability. Yet those who genuinely appreciate you will celebrate your growth, respect your limits, and meet you from a place of balance rather than dependency. This contrast becomes an invaluable filter in your spiritual journey, allowing you to see who resonates with your soul and who only resonates with your service. To truly separate care from compliance, you must pause before responding, breathe before agreeing, and ask yourself whether your yes comes from sincerity or from fear. You learn to feel the difference in your body. Care feels peaceful, warm, and open. Compliance feels tense, heavy, and pressured. And as your spiritual awakening deepens, your intuition becomes sharper, guiding you toward choices that honor your energy instead of depleting it. This boundary transforms the way you love by making your love cleaner, healthier, and rooted in freedom rather than obligation. Over time, you stop apologizing for protecting your peace. You stop feeling guilty for resting, and you stop believing that compassion requires self-abandonment. You realize that your energy is a sacred resource and that not everyone is meant to receive it. You understand that saying no is not cruelty, it is clarity. And you finally recognize that your care is most powerful when it is given from fullness, not fear. Because when you no longer tie your compassion to compliance, you step into a level of spiritual wisdom that makes your empathy unbreakable. 5. Elimination of preemptive accommodation. The elimination of preemptive accommodation is one of the most powerful boundaries you will ever learn. Because when you constantly try to meet people's needs before they even express them, you unconsciously teach them to expect endless service while slowly draining your inner energy. When you rush to help before anyone asks, you blur the line between kindness and self-erasure, turning yourself into someone who carries responsibilities that were never spoken, chosen, or agreed to. And in the long run, this habit creates relationships where you feel overextended, unappreciated, and unseen, while others become increasingly comfortable taking without ever needing to ask. That is why Carl Jung's insight, your vision becomes clear only when you look into your own heart, is so important here. Because unless you bring your awareness back into yourself, you cannot recognize how much emotional weight you carry simply because you assume someone might need something. Eliminating preemptive accommodation is not about becoming cold or less generous. It is about giving yourself permission to stop acting on imagined expectations and start responding only to what is real, spoken, and mutually understood. This boundary forces you to slow down and let other people use their own voices instead of relying on your intuition to save them from every discomfort. It teaches you to release the urge to anticipate needs so quickly that you lose contact with your own needs, your own peace, and your own spiritual center. And as your spirituality grows and your spiritual development deepens, you begin to see that real connection cannot thrive in a space where you constantly overfunction while others underfunction. The moment you stop stepping in automatically, something begins to shift. People either step up and learn to articulate what they want, or they disappear because the unspoken benefits are gone. Either outcome reveals the truth of the relationship. You also begin to reclaim your energy because you no longer leak it into situations that require mind reading, emotional guesswork, or silent sacrifice that no one ever acknowledged in the first place. Letting others ask for what they need is an act of equality, not selfishness. And choosing to respond only when there is a clear request honors both you and them. It allows you to engage from a grounded state rather than reacting from anxiety, fear of rejection, or the old belief that you must overgive to be valued. This shift helps you rebuild relationships on clarity rather than assumption, on honesty rather than anticipation, and on mutual respect rather than silent emotional labor. And when you give from this place, your presence becomes more authentic, your boundaries more defined, and your energy far more protected, allowing you to participate in the world without losing yourself in the process. Declare your power today by commenting below, "I no longer shrink myself for others." Let this truth settle into your spirit as you step into healthier boundaries. And if this message speaks to you, share it with someone who needs the courage to stop over-accommodating, because empowerment grows when we pass it on. 6. Refusal of emergency status. Not everything is an emergency, and the moment you truly understand this, your entire inner world begins to shift, because most of the crises you've been carrying were never yours to hold in the first place. As an empath, you've been conditioned to respond to every raised voice, every trembling emotion, every sudden message, and every sigh of distress as if the universe itself is collapsing, and you are the only one who can hold it together. But this habit collapses your boundaries and keeps your nervous system in a constant state of alert. Carl Jung, whose teachings form the backbone of true spiritual wisdom, reminded us that people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. And often, they hand you their panic precisely because they don't want to face it themselves. When you internalize this truth, you begin to see how many so-called emergencies are nothing more than emotional pressure disguised as urgency, projected onto you by people who never learned how to self-regulate or take responsibility for their own inner storms. And this is where your transformation begins, because when you stop reacting instantly, you are not becoming cold, you are becoming conscious. You start retraining your nervous system to pause rather than panic, to observe rather than absorb, to ask yourself quietly and powerfully, is this truly urgent? Or is someone trying to make me feel responsible for what they've left unresolved? This single moment of clarity changes everything, because you no longer jump at every vibration of fear around you. You decide when and how to respond. And as this boundary strengthens, you begin noticing how often urgency is used as a subtle manipulation, sometimes intentional, sometimes unconscious, by people who rely on your empathy to fix what they refuse to confront. You stop allowing others to turn their emotional disorganization into your urgent responsibility, and you start seeing how heavy your life became simply because you inherited other people's unprocessed chaos. With each step, you reclaim more of yourself. The pressure in your chest loosens. Your breath deepens. Your mind becomes clearer because you are no longer living inside someone else's storm. You discover that urgency is rarely real. It is often an illusion created by people who fear silence, accountability, or discomfort. True emergencies are rare, but emotional emergencies are constant for those who refuse to grow. When you refuse to participate in them, you're not abandoning your empathy. You are elevating it. You are shifting from reactive emotion to conscious compassion, the kind of compassion that does not require you to sacrifice yourself to prove your goodness. This is what spiritual wisdom truly looks like. Responding with clarity instead of rushing, listening with discernment instead of collapsing into panic, and learning that you are allowed to take your time even when others demand you hurry. And as this boundary settles into your life, something extraordinary happens. People stop being able to control you through pressure. Their fear no longer dictates your actions. Their urgency no longer directs your energy. Their chaos no longer becomes your responsibility. You stand rooted, steady, grounded, no longer the empath who absorbs everything, but the soul who sees clearly, chooses wisely, and commands their own presence. This is the deadly boundary that makes empaths immune. Because once you master it, emotional pressure loses its power, and the world around you can no longer shake what you have rebuilt within. 7. Implementation of exit protocols, the keystone boundary. The implementation of exit protocols stands as the keystone boundary because it determines whether every other boundary you set will hold their shape or quietly collapse under pressure. And for an empath who feels deeply and loves sincerely, this boundary becomes a spiritual safeguard, a line drawn not in anger, but in clarity. It means having firm rules for when you will leave a relationship, a conversation, or any environment that pulls you away from your inner truth, and honoring those rules without hesitation when the conditions are met. Because in spirituality and spiritual awakening, integrity with yourself is the highest form of self-respect. An exit protocol is not a threat, a warning, or an emotional performance. It is a private agreement you make with your own soul, a structure that protects you from the subtle erosion that happens when you stay too long in places where you are unheard, unseen, or undervalued. This boundary becomes necessary because empaths often give second chances, like they are part of their breathing, offering grace even when it is undeserved, hoping for change even when the evidence is missing, and extending their patience long after their emotional energy has been drained. Without a clear exit rule, compassion becomes a doorway through which disappointment constantly enters. That is why the keystone boundary teaches you to define the moment when leaving becomes the only path that protects your spirit. It might be after one violation, or two, or three. What matters is that the standard is yours, not someone else's persuasion or guilt. As Carl Jung taught, a person's true liberation begins the moment they refuse to betray themselves. And this principle echoes deeply within the heart of an empath who is awakening from the patterns that once kept them stuck. Exit protocols give you emotional safety because they eliminate the exhausting internal dialogue of, should I stay? Should I try again? Did I expect too much? Instead, the rule stands firm, like a lighthouse guiding you back to your own power. It removes the temptation to rationalize harmful behavior, and it stops you from shrinking yourself in order to keep a connection alive. By honoring your exit boundary, you teach your subconscious that your needs are non-negotiable, that your energy deserves protection, and that your heart is not obligated to tolerate what wounds it. This is where spiritual awakening strengthens your intuition, helping you sense when a situation is no longer aligned with who you are becoming. When you practice this boundary, your nervous system begins to trust you again. Your inner voice grows louder. Your energy rises because you are no longer trapped in emotional recycling, hoping that someone else will finally offer what they have repeatedly shown they cannot give. You learn that leaving is not failure. Leaving is choosing truth over illusion, alignment over attachment, and self-preservation over self-sacrifice. This quiet power changes the way people treat you because they sense that your empathy is supported by a backbone, your kindness is supported by standards, and your heart is supported by boundaries that do not crumble under pressure. With consistent practice, exit protocols strengthen every other boundary you build. Your communication becomes clearer, your tolerance becomes healthier, and your relationships become more respectful. You attract connections that honor your presence instead of draining your spirit, and you naturally distance yourself from those who rely on your softness to excuse their lack of accountability. Over time, this boundary becomes a spiritual compass, protecting your peace, elevating your growth, and guiding you toward a life where your empathy is your strength, not your vulnerability. Affirm your strength today by commenting below. I honor my exit protocols, and I protect my peace. Let this affirmation guide you as you step away from what drains you and step toward what strengthens your spirit. Trust that every boundary you enforce elevates your spiritual wisdom and aligns you with the life you are meant to walk. At the end of the day, these 7 boundaries aren't about pushing the world away. They're about finally protecting the light within you. As Carl Jung taught, true strength comes from honoring your inner truth, even when others don't understand it. When you embrace these boundaries, you stop absorbing everyone else's chaos and start living from a place of clarity, confidence, and spiritual freedom. If this message spoke to you, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. And make sure to turn on the notification bell so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Your journey to deeper awareness and empowered empathy continues, and we're here to walk it with you.